Hey, how's it going? It's February 13th, 2022. This is your Daily Sweet Talk. What is a podcast? That's something my mom asks sometimes, and I don't think she understands at all. I think she would disagree with that. But when she's asking that, it's like she's asking like, what is it? Where do people get it? What is that when people listen to podcasts? What are they talking about? What I'm saying is, what is it? What is a podcast really? When podcasts first came about, sorry, my back was itchy. When podcasts first came about, it was with the iPod, of course. They were very specifically like, because the iPod was for music, and I don't know when podcasts came about, but this was for a thing on iTunes where there were shows that you could that you could download and listen to on your iPod that were just people talking, basically. My idea of a classic type of podcast like that would be just, I don't know. It sounded like I was going to give an example of a show. I don't know. The type of podcast I used to hear about when I first started hearing about podcasts, they were all like by YouTubers and stuff like that. The Yog Pod, the Rooster Teeth podcast. So it's so that type of podcast, just people talking basically, like about anything, sometimes about a subject, I guess, like, oh, what's in the news, but that's not what a podcast is anymore, and it certainly isn't something. It's not something you listen to on your iPod, because people don't use iPods anymore. Maybe you listen to it on your phone, but it's not called a phone cast, and it's also not exclusive to Apple products anymore, like the iPod is. Pod, as far as maybe I'm confused. The pod in podcasts is from the iPod, and the pod in iPod, I don't know, it's a pod, like, for music, like, it's its own thing. So it's not like podcasts are now referring to something else. They're still referring specifically to the iPod device, the Apple device. So they're named after Apple products. It's weird that they have this connection to Apple still, even though they have nothing to do with that. And they're certainly not those type of shows anymore. There are still a lot of podcasts like that, but there's also like audio dramas, what used to be called radio plays, and now they're just called podcasts. They're not like the people talking podcast. It is people talking, but it's a production. It's not a discussion, And there are more elaborate discussion podcasts, with interviews and stuff. And of course, there's video podcasts, which just brings it to a whole other level of what even is this anymore? What specifies what a podcast is and what isn't a podcast? It's basically less like if you say this is a podcast instead of a web series or something, then that's what it is. Like the most famous podcast right now, the Joe Rogan podcast. Whatever you think about that, that's the most famous one right now, pretty much. How is that not just a web series? Norm Macdonald Live, I don't think was that considered a podcast? Because that's a similar type of podcast. Tom Green Live, like those are like live programs, but they're also podcast. The H3H3 podcast is a podcast. It streams directly to Twitch and YouTube or whatever. It's streaming. How is that a podcast? What is a podcast anymore? What is it? Podcast. Let me see how many. This is gonna be another one where how many times do I say the word in the thing? But what is the word? What does it mean anymore? We need a new word. It's tied directly to this thing. It has nothing to do with it anymore. And well, there's a whole other discussion here about what types of media are what, but that's for another day.